So today on the show, our first interview on Turning Points podcast is one of my teachers and my dear friend, Werner. Werner Meir is his name. He's a Swiss-German spiritual teacher living in India. We're podcasting zooming him in from India.
From the future.
Not from the future.
It's tomorrow morning. That's the future.
It is tomorrow morning to him. You're right. You're so right. And Werner is in his 60s, living in India since he was 25. He tells his story from beginning to end. It's fascinating. We talk about what brought him to India, why he stayed in India, and I loved listening to him. His story is fascinating. He lived in caves. He meditated in silence, sometimes 2 years, sometimes 5 years. And he is now woke, and he's a spiritual teacher. The real woke. He's enlightened. And so tune in and enjoy our talk with Werner.
Yes.
Nice to meet you, Sean.
Nice to meet you, man. I feel like I know quite a bit about you just over the years.
I see.
It's all good things, actually. I enjoy she reads me the text that you send her sometimes, and I really enjoy that you tease her often, because I also tease her often.
I see.
All right. So the question that we start off usually on our podcast asking everyone, and then, of course, we go off on whatever we want to talk about, is do you remember a point when you were young where the world didn't make sense, like the things you'd been taught, you felt uncomfortable in your skin, or something wasn't quite right in your belief systems?
Actually, as long as I can remember back, I felt something strange there. As a kid, I felt I'm not belonging here. Somehow it's a mistake. What the hell am I doing here in this world? It went in that childish mind then so far that I suspected my parents, actually they may not be my parents, they brought me from somewhere and they don't tell me the truth, what's going on. So as long as I can remember, I felt something is strange. Then I was looking for answers, where I could find, and of course, being brought up there with Christian surroundings and going to all the usual Christian training, Sunday school and stuff. Then with about 12, I become a very ardent Christian. The parson of our church came home to my parents and said, Werner should become a priest, should become a parson. He has all the makeup for that. But then I started to question more, and then he didn't like me anymore so much. And then with 14, I came across yoga. There was a very good yoga school in Switzerland. At that time, there weren't yoga schools everywhere. There wasn't spiritual literature everywhere. But then this yoga school really opened up new possibility. And for the first time, I had really the feeling, wow, this whole damn story could make sense. There is a possibility to do something with yourself and your life. This was a Hungarian woman. Maybe you have heard the name Elisabeth Heitsch. She wrote at that time a book which became at that time something of a spiritual bestseller called Initiation. And her partner was an Indian man from Chennai, Selvarajan Yesudian, and they were just giving me from the beginning a very good direction. They were always quoting Ramana Maharshi and Sri Ramakrishna. And so from there, that really took off.
Do you remember when you first decided that you'd like to go to India?
As soon as I started to read about yoga, then I had all these fantasies. Oh, I will go to the Himalayas, find a yogi in a cave, and become a yogi in the Himalayas.
How old were you? So you said you were you 14? You said you were 14 when you found yoga?
Yes,
And
right.
so pretty much right away in yoga, or when you heard about India. So 14, 15, 16, you wanted to travel to India, and you kind of had the fantasy and the, I don't want to say fantasy is in a derogatory way, but in your mind you thought to move to India and have that kind of spiritual experience of.
Yes, it was there. Then, of course, I was a young, healthy man, and having all my usual urges. So I was involved there in living my life, but there was always that idea, eventually I'll go to India. And actually I went then for years through quite a struggle, had periods that I thought, no, I don't want to have anything to do with this world, spending all my time, my spare time, doing yoga, reading. I grabbed any book that I could find. And then thinking, no, I'm finished with all that. But then all my desires would just build up, and then it would come out, burst out, and they would make up for all the things that I didn't do for some time. But yes, it was set from early. Somehow it seems like I didn't have a choice. I was looking and seeking my whole life for something that makes sense. And when I came across yoga, and through yoga about deeper spirituality, somehow it was deep down, it was clear, if there is anything that makes sense for me in my life, then I have to go for that.
And do you remember what brought you to India? Like what, when you got the ticket and when you decided, was it somebody said something, or what, when, why was the time right when you finally went, and when was that?
Actually, I decided to go quite early, and always was waiting for that. I didn't like school, although people said, oh, you should go to college, should go to university. I didn't feel like, so I became a farmer. And did the training as a farmer and the agricultural school. And after that, when I was finished with 20, I thought soon I'm going to India. So I started to take up only jobs of which I thought I'm just doing that for some time, earning some money, and then I go to India. And I was talking about it, all my friends started already laughing about me. Always you talk about going to India, you'll never go. And it took till 25 until I finally left. But during that time, for a few years, I had already contact with Swami Chinmayananda. He's a Vedanta, he was a Vedanta teacher who has created a school, ashram school in Bombay, where you can go and study Vedanta. So he used to come to Switzerland for 10 days, has his talks about the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads. I would attend those and ask him, can I come? But he had this kind of courses that once you are in, then you should stay, or you can go, but you cannot easily join in the middle. So he said, wait. Whenever he came, I said, can I come now? No, wait. And somehow that was very good, because in that period, I had to experience on this level, in this world, quite a lot of things which was good that I had gone through. But then when I left finally with 25, I felt now I'm really going for that. That was 1980, and I'm still here.
Wow.
Did you feel like, I know when I landed the first time in India, it felt like home to me. I felt like I'd come home and I knew I wanted to come back a lot. Is that how you felt when you first landed? Because some people don't. Some people want to run as soon as they arrive.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I landed in Delhi in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning. It was 30 centigrades in the night. I came out and that heat assaulted me. And I came out and thought, wow, finally I'm here. Never was that feeling I want to run away. After that, I went down to Bombay, to that school, and it felt wonderful. In Switzerland, I felt always lonely. Although it was easy to make friends, I had a lot of friends, as you call them, friends. I could easily hang out with people, but at the same time, I felt strange and lonely. And then I came to that school, we were 80 students there, and I felt, finally, I'm coming home with equal-minded people. But it didn't take that long that the same feeling came back again. But even there, I felt lonely. And it became clear it has nothing really to do with the people. It has nothing really to do with the surroundings. That's something that I'm creating in myself. Anyhow, I was very happy. It was really giving me a good start for India, being a bit in a sheltered space and sometimes going out to, we used to go to some, in the midst of that chaos that is amazing when you come from the West. But then it also, I understood, okay, I like the school and it's very sincere and serious, but still it's not really my cup of tea. That reading books, reading more, studying Sanskrit grammar rules and going for that. I wanted to go deeper, practice. So I started to look around. I'm always talking. Do you want to say something?
No, we're fascinated. Sorry, it's just I for a moment there when you described walking off the plane and having that the heat that you said assaulted you, you looked off for a moment and you were reliving that moment in your mind. I could see it, and you had almost an emotional reaction to that memory, like a very deep, enriching feel. The question that I had as you were experiencing and talking about what you just had, especially when you said, the loneliness went away as soon as you got to India and then went into the classroom. When you look at that moment in fondness, what was it about that moment? Was it the achieving of getting to India and that finally, after 10 years of knowing you were going to get there and finally getting there, was that what filled you with joy? Or was there something about the environment of actually being in India that filled you with the obvious joy that you just experienced as living in the memory?
I think it was mainly a feeling that I had coming out, something that is very special to India. When you come from outside and even if you land in a big city like Delhi, there's simply something there, which is also there in the West, which is there in special places in the West. That was Leo.
Hi, Leo.
But which has been overwritten a lot in most of the places in the West, and which is, in spite of the chaos, In spite of the noise, in spite of all the stuff that is going on in India, it's simply there.
So even in all the noise of India, in the city environment of it, there is still a resonance of peace, a peaceful feeling that kind of washes over you.
Yes, at least that's what I felt when I came out of the plane. Wow, and sort of it felt very familiar.
Wow, that's interesting. Familiar, that's powerful.
Yes, yes.
That's the same way I felt. It was interesting because I landed also, many of us do when we come overseas, we land at between 1 and 3 and 4 in the morning after not sleeping for 10 to 24 hours. And it's like in a surreal dream anyway. And I also landed in Delhi the first time that I went. And it felt totally foreign, like nothing I'd ever experienced, but completely comfortable and familiar at the same time. Like it was that dichotomy. And what's interesting, Werner, is that Sean has not yet been to India.
No.
He has a wife and children, and so it's a little bit more challenging. But we used to, Sati and I would joke with him for years now, saying that if he ever went to India, he would never come back.
Well, you got there and stayed there for 40 years. My wife would come and find me and probably choke me out if I stayed in India for longer than a couple weeks. So.
Yeah, so it's totally fine. Yeah, go ahead. We want you to talk, so
please
go ahead.
Just, I can come back to my story, but just in the same context. I went back to Switzerland for a visit after 12 years for the first time. And then when I came back from that visit after 3 months, I landed in Chennai. And then I just walked from the airport to the local train to hop on a bus. And it was also in the night, but it was still noisy, lots of people, it was dirty. I came with my 2 little bags and hopped in that local train, and I just liked it all. I just loved it to be back. In spite of all this external stuff, when you come from Switzerland, where it's really the total opposite. It's all so regulated, clean. You're not allowed to make a peeps, otherwise the police comes. And then I came back into this chaos, and I just loved it all to come back.
Do you remember how long you had to go back for Switzerland that first time, and how long it was in between coming back to India?
How long I was in Switzerland, or how long until I went?
Well, you left in India that first time when you were 25. How long did you stay in India? And then when you went back?
Going back 12 years.
Oh, 12 years that first time.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, and then when you were in Switzerland, how long were you in Switzerland for?
3 months.
3 months, and then you went back again. Wow, I don't think I knew that 12 years the first time without leaving. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And so, how long did you get into that 3 months in Switzerland before you were ready to get back?
I didn't quite get the question.
When you were in Switzerland, when you visited Switzerland for 3 months after that first 12 years, how long did you make it in Switzerland before you were ready to go back to India?
Oh, I took the return ticket when I left.
Right, so you knew you were going to go for 3 months, but were you ready to leave like the second you landed, or did you, how was that 3 months? Do you remember?
Anyhow, because I went back only when my experience of all this had already changed profoundly.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then it was all a game. I went back with enthusiasm, just let's go for the ride for some time, knowing anyhow, for the time being, I don't have to stay there. I'll come back here.
So there wasn't a pressure when you were in Switzerland. There wasn't a pressure anymore. You had let go of a lot of that, any kind of
yes.
feel.
Right,
okay,
right.
Gotcha.
Actually, it was quite fun. But if you want, I come back a bit to my story there in Bombay.
Yes.
although I liked the school, I liked the teacher, I liked, it was not Swami Chinmayananda himself, he was always traveling around and giving talks, but one of his students was the teacher there. But then somehow I felt it's not really what I should do there, and started to look around, visited other teachers when they came. I saw Nisargadatta during that time, I saw Anandamai, I saw J. Krishnamurti, and then there was a student who told me about his teacher in Kerala, about a young woman in a fisher village. Nobody knew her except local people. And everything he told me fascinated me, except that I thought he is always so over emotional. Something we were there busy with that abstract Advaita, and he was always so emotional about her. And she used to write him letters. Oh, my son, Amma is so sad that you are away from her. And I thought, what kind of guru is this supposed to be? Right? But still. And then at the end of 1980, I traveled with an American man through the South because for some time there were no classes. And we thought, let's go and see Chandro's Amma also in Kerala. And then we came there, there was only the house of her parents, one hut made of leaves, like my roof here, with one hut with 3 rooms made of leaves, and a teeny temple, like 4 meters or 4 meters. That was the whole place. And when I walked in there, she came out of her hut, she totally overwhelmed me right away. I fell at her feet, didn't even remove my backpack, stayed there for a few days, and it was so amazing an experience. I felt like I'm somehow in a fairy tale, or like tales of the Greek gods that come down to earth. She was doing there for the locals at the time 3 times a week, Krishna Bhava and Devi Bhava. That means she was standing in the temple as Krishna for some time, and then there was a break, and then after that the same thing as Devi. And there was that young, crazy mystic with just, except during those Bhava nights, we were just a few people, a handful of people hanging around with her. And it was such an overwhelming experience. After that, I walked out like stoned, like on a trip. Still, I went back to Bombay. I had talked to the main Swami that maybe it's not my cup of tea, and he had actually given me a great offer, an opportunity that when they are creating now an ashram in the Himalayas, and when it's finished, I can go there. There will be a school in Hindi with a teacher there, but he also will be there. He thought he will withdraw from giving talks, and that with a very small group, I can stay with him. This was an offer beyond all expectations, because when he came to Bombay, 10,000 people would come running after him. But then, when I was in Bombay, then this Amma from Kerala was always in my head. I couldn't stand it. After a short time, I left and went down to Kerala. So since in between, I went for another visit, went again to Bombay, but then I couldn't stand it, and I went back. Since March 81, then I was there. So actually, I didn't finish that course, which I intended to do for 3 years in Bombay. I stayed only 1 year. And after that, I went down and was with Amma. And since then, actually, I have always been either there or here. Haven't traveled much in my life.
So, what I know, because I've known you for many years, that you meditated in some of the caves in Tiruvannamalai, and then also they built you something in Amma's ashram. So, what was the first time that Amma told you, or that you went away to be in silence? When was that?
Actually, in the beginning, there was not really much space there where you could hide. But from the beginning, she said, you can sit, you want to sit, so don't do anything else. But then sitting there, meditating there meant I'm sitting in the corner of a hut and people come in and out and walk over my knees and talk in loud voices as if I was not sitting there, or then sitting under a coconut tree and somehow moving with the shade and the ants would eat me up. And then I asked her, can I not go somewhere where I'm a bit more silent? She said, wait, and kept me there for months. And then at a certain time, she said, okay, you can go to Tiruvannamalai. And actually, the first 4 years with her, then I spent a lot of time here. There was a house from an American devotee, Neil Rosner, who became one of the senior Swamis now, Swami something Adhyatmananda, no, Paramatmananda. Yeah, is he now? His house was here, so I could live in that house. And then whenever Amma called me, I used to go to Kerala. And whenever she let me go, I used to come here to Tiruvannamalai and live there. And from there, used to go, the first period, I used to go up to Virupaksha cave. When I came to Tiruvannamalai, she said me only two things. She said, Virupaksha is a good way, a good place to meditate. That was one. And the second one, stay away from Westerners.
That's always good advice.
That's what I did. After that, when I came the second time here, I just stayed in the house. I didn't go really out much. And then 85, I went from here there. An old French woman wanted to see Amma. So I accompanied her to Kerala. And I thought I'm just going for a short visit. But then Amma nailed me down for 5 years at the row. And by that time, they had constructed that cave. We called it the cave, but it was just a little cell underground. And right away, she said, you can go. There were 2 cells. You can go and live in one of those. And so there it started. For 2.5 years, I used to come out because first it was just you could go down a few steps and then go left or right in one of those 2 cells. And that was it. So I had to come out for the bathroom, had to come out for eating. And I used to do a little work in the ashram, but most of the time I was living down there. Then I asked whether I can withdraw a bit more even. And she agreed. So we added to one of the cells a toilet and then a gate, like just wooden bars that the air could go through, but that just closing, that they could close the door. And then for the first time I closed the door and stayed there for 2 years without coming out.
Wow. Wow. What was that? What was that like? Because that would have
That
been.
was, that was after years already of doing not much else, but meditating all the time. I sat as much as I could, day and night. So it was not that much of a change, not more coming out. First, Amma came when I first entered, and we locked. And I gave her the key and said, now take the key, because if I hear, I was in the middle of the ashram that was growing and growing. If I hear you outside, I may come out. So I don't want that. And she used to sometimes come and visit. and brought the key always with her. And after 10 months, I told her, now you can leave the key. I'm not coming out. So,
Wow. And why didn't you want to come out? What was your mechanism for not wanting to come out of that silence?
it was mainly that I felt that's what I have to do. I have to say, I mean, I was still struggling there. I still had this idea, I have to struggle, I have to reach something, a goal called enlightenment or whatever, hoping that I have to do my work and eventually something will be served on a silver platter called enlightenment. But by the time I had done years of lots of meditation, and I had a bit calm down, because in the beginning I was mad. In the beginning I was mad with the idea, I want something. And there was a real pain in the bum for Amma, because I went always after her, do something about it. For heaven's sake, do something. You can do it like this. Ooh, why don't you do anything? And she somehow managed to keep that fire alive, but somehow to keep me going, because sometimes in the beginning I was desperate, thinking I try, and nothing is happening. And she somehow managed to dangle in front of my nose that idea, just work a little more, right? Just work a little more. It will be all right. But then when I was staying in the cave, finally I had developed at least a little bit of patience, which I didn't have in the beginning. So that I could accept, all right, I'm just doing whatever I have to do. And she was very supportive. She used to come once in 3 weeks, once in a month. And then actually she played a terrible game with me. She really put me up totally on a pedestal.
Oh.
She used to come and praise me and tell me that you are the number one and the others are the zeros behind and stuff. And she was telling to people all kinds of stuff that, you guys, what you are doing, look at Werner. And of course, I had then not so much friendly feelings that would come to me in the game from the surroundings when she was always doing that game. And I was scared, so thinking, if a guru is doing that, that's dangerous. Be careful, but in spite of that, of course, I still felt.
You couldn't help it, man.
Couldn't help it.
No,
couldn't help it.
You want to
somehow
feel that sense of importance, right? You want that
right.
identity with, oh, I am getting somewhere. She flipped the script on you. At first it was you're not getting anywhere, and now you're at the top. She's testing your ego, I suppose.
Right, she was boosting it. And then really giving me the feeling that it is very, very, very important what I'm doing here. And then suddenly after 2 years, she took all that support away and drove me through a period of total confusion. It started that she just visited once in the cave as usual, and then she came, made a funny face, and there was a funny feeling, and she made indications as if something is totally wrong, but not giving any explanations, and she left me in total, oh my God, what's wrong? And then only I became aware how much I had been relying on that relationship with her, in spite of coming from the Advaitic side. And she has always encouraged, yes, this is your way. Whenever I had the tendency to go more on the devotional side, because the whole surrounding was very devotional, she would come and say, no, this is your way, the Advaita approach. And so I would say, it's all unreal and it's all a dream. But then I became aware how much I have totally been building up on that awareness that Amma is there, she's looking, nothing can go wrong. And then suddenly she gave me the feeling, everything is wrong, and she's not happy. And I was sitting there in my little cave, and what's wrong, what's wrong? And then all my energies build up over the years of intense meditation start to go completely crazy, up and down and left and right in the body. I had been a strict celibate for 10 years, and then suddenly there was assaulted with sexuality. I would jump up in my little cave and walk to and fro like a tiger in the cage, trying to control all that and balancing out and slowly get a little bit balance. And then after 3 weeks, she let me hang there for 3 weeks. And after 3 weeks, Amma came. And I thought, we can now we can balance out, can put it right, everything again. And when she left, it was worse than before. And so gradually, I really got nuts, and I could hear what's going on around the cave. I was in the midst of the ashram, and previous I had heard Amma talking and how she was, Werner, and there she was telling things like, Werner, he has disobeyed Amma, he has done pranayamas, and now his brain is overheated, he's getting crazy. And I slowly but steadily got crazy there. Really got on a trip and started to hear people talking all the time, even when they were not talking. And they started to hear like people were commenting on whatever I was thinking about and then misinterpreting. And I was there on a total crazy trip. And Amma was not approachable. She was not giving any help. She was totally pushing me further. When I was in the midst of it, I was totally, undone. I thought all my work now for 10 years that I have done, it goes down the drain, and maybe the end of my spiritual career is that I'm ending up in the loony bin. Had already all these fantasies, they will pack me up into an airplane, send me to Switzerland, and my father will be standing there. I told you all the time. Because he did always tell me, if you continue like this, you're going to get crazy. She pushed me, but then later I understood, not at that time, later I understood, she knew exactly how far she can push me, that I'm not going irreparably over the edge. Finally, I came out of the cave and said, actually, I heard Amma talking out, and then I said, where is Amma, where is Amma? And they said, she's in reunion. And I said, no, I know she's here. I heard her talking. They called Amma, Werner is gone completely banana. And she said, don't worry, just put him up in a room and watch over him that he's not doing any mischief. And so the next humiliation was that newcomer brahmacharis, young boys, they taking turns 24 hours watching over me in a room. So first she had boosted up my ego, and after that she made a complete idiot of myself. Then I had gone through two very strong emotions. One was being totally pissed with Amma, thinking I have had so much faith that nothing can go wrong when you're watching there. And obviously you have miscalculated, everything has gone wrong, and were really pissed and angry with her. Or then switching on the other side and thinking, Amma had so great expectations in me and I have destroyed it all with my ego. It's all my fault. But then I started to work, thinking the ashram had become very active, thinking, I have only for myself done my meditation, I have to work now. And then slowly, still supervised all the time that I'm not doing mischiefs. But then it started to dawn. No, actually, it's just a big game. Nothing is really lost. And for the first time in my life, I was ready to accept I don't have a clue. Previously, I always knew everything. I had studied, I had listened, I had taught, I had meditated, so I knew everything. I knew the whole hierarchy of spirituality, knew what is true, what is real, what is unreal, what is the highest, and blah, blah, blah. And suddenly all this has crumbled down and nothing made sense anymore. And for the first time, I was ready, really, really, if I'm honest, I don't have a clue what's going on. And right now it's crazy, it's totally upside down, but I just had to stop resisting and go with it and go through it. And when that resistance stopped, because before I was desperately somehow trying to make sense, desperately holding on to something real. Previous, as an Advaitin student, blabbing out, oh, it's all a dream, it's unreal, it's not the truth. But then when the reality of it started to crumble, then instead of letting go, I desperately tried to hold on to something real, and everything went through the fingers. And when I stopped that, and okay, I don't know, accepting, I don't know, I just have to go through, then it started to calm down. And I started to go back in my cave again. And it was not that the old reality started to reform again. It was more out of the rubble of all that, a new experience started to emerge. A new experience of myself, of the whole world, what this is all about. All my old belief system, which had been in a way very helpful, pushing me on my way, but most of those concepts, they simply didn't make much sense anymore, including that final goal I had been holding on to so desperately, that enlightenment, thinking that in one moment, boom, there is that explosion and that's the end of the story. It was more than a new experience emerged, a new perspective, and it became clear, okay, one chapter is closed, a new chapter starts, but from there it continues, and it will continue, and it continues. That essence remains the same, but the experience of it keeps on unfolding, and there is no limit to that, there is no end to that. So even that idea that had been holding on so strongly of reaching a goal of enlightenment didn't make sense anymore. Where is that enlightenment? Or wherever you are, it still continues. Then I felt that time that I'm standing on my own feet, stayed for a few more months, but then I left, came here again. That was 1990. I felt Amma had done her job as a guru. I have done my job as a disciple. Getting that guidance from within now, how to proceed. And I came here, not more in Amma's house, that was also sold, but then I didn't know whether I ever go back again. Doing again a lot of things that I strictly avoided before. Before, my life was black and white, pure, impure, spiritual, unspiritual. Everything was in categories. And suddenly this whole damn story was all the play of the same divinity. And whether you are totally holding on to the spiritual or the not spiritual. As long as you are holding on, you are totally holding on to your idea of a story. It's not that much difference. And so I was living here for 2.5 years. Still, I was sitting a bit, not like before, but it was more a period of settling down, letting the new energy, the new perspective settle down, getting more solid. And during that period, 92, then I went for the first time back to Switzerland, and that was great, that was fun. And actually the one thing that I didn't expect, finally I made friends also with my father, because our life had been difficult all the time together. Even when I grew up, I was not an easy guy to deal with because I had all these strange ideas. And he was not a especially good man. He was not a bad man. He was just a normal Swiss German citizen in a village who was very conscious of what everybody else thinks about him. And then, so my being totally out of the way was always something that was nagging at him. And he was very negative. I heard that from others. I didn't contact him directly most of the time when I was in India, but he was very negative about it. And then when I came back, he expected that some kind of a religious fanatic now who tries to convert people. And then I was then just behaving totally normal. And even when his old mechanism started, to which I previously always used to respond in the same way, and we would chung, 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 and and explode finally, I just wouldn't respond anymore. And then he completely, somehow, he was so astonished, he completely opened up and started for the first time also to listen, and we had for the first time something like a friendship in our common life. That was a nice experience. But it's not that I felt, oh, I want to be now in Switzerland. I felt if I have to go back, if it feels that I have to go somewhere else than India, then that's fine. I can be anywhere, but it didn't feel like that. So I came back, and so far it doesn't feel that I should go anywhere else. After 2.5 years here, with that visit in Switzerland in between, I felt, okay, I feel like sitting again more, not driven like before. Before I had that idea, I want to reach something, and my way to reach it is to sit and sit and sit. And Amma has very much confirmed, yes, that's your approach, that's your way, do that, do as good as you can, more. And now I didn't have that idea of reaching a goal anymore, but I felt it's good to sit again more, because it had become natural for me to, in that way, to intensify that experience of the present. And so I started to sit again more here, and then I wrote to Amma, I'm sitting again more. Maybe I'm continuing doing it here. Maybe I'm going now to the Himalayas, find a nice place in the Himalayas, or if she's interested, I can also come back and sit there again. And then she was interested. And so I went back to the ashram in the beginning of 93. She didn't try to pull me again externally in a close story. I didn't try to hang on her skirt anymore like before, but she seemed to be happy, and I went back to my cave. For 3 months I came out, and then I felt, oh, it's time to close the door again. Not like before, that I have to be more intense in order to achieve something, but it just felt the right thing to do. I didn't know for how long I'm going to stay there. It just felt right. So I went there, not knowing how long I'm going to stay, but then somehow 7 years passed until I came out again.
You were in a cave for 7 years.
Yes.
7.
7.
Oh my
Yes.
God.
I wasn't in silence. People could come down and talk through the doors and look through the gate like watching a monkey in the cage. But I would keep people away. The ashram had grown very much by that time. There were crowds there by that time. And people didn't know that they can come, but the people who lived in the ashram knew. So I started to talk to people who had a bit doubts or difficulties staying there, but they kept, somebody brought me food at lunch, and then after that I kept a bit time that I would talk usually to one person or two, because there was a little space. You came down the stairs and there was a little space in front of my gate, so somebody could sit there or two people could sit there. But most of the time I was there, keeping quiet in my little space. It was a bit more than 2 square meters.
Oh my, wow.
People thought I'm doing a terrible thing to myself, but I spent 7 very happy and very peaceful years down there. Then 98, 2 people from Switzerland came to French, Swiss. They always had problems, the couple, they always had problems, and they had somehow made me into the connecting link with the ashram. They had already come the first time in 86. And whenever they came to the ashram, they would come and visit me. And then 98, they came, but they brought their daughter who had problems in Switzerland, and she had not been living at home, but then she came home and said, this is my situation, I had problems, and they somehow tried to be together, the 3 of them, and it was total hell. They couldn't handle it at all. And the parents told her, oh, come to India with us for a visit, see Amma, and then we'll bring you to Werner, he will understand you, he will talk to you. So they dumped her daughter in front of my cave door. And there was quite from the beginning a good connection. She used to come and we would to talk about her story, and then she started to get interested. She had a few yoga lessons in Switzerland before coming, and then I started to teach her a few exercises, and she started to do more practice, and then a Tai Chi teacher came along and she started to do Tai Chi and take yoga lessons in the ashram also. And soon she was practicing quite a lot. And she used to, I let her come more often than others. When others wanted to come regularly, I said, no, you come after 2 weeks again. But she let her come every 4 days or so. And we had a good talk together, and it became clear sooner or later, I'll come out and we may go our way together. But then still our relationship continued for 2 years through the gate. I stayed for another 2 years in the cave until I finally came out in the year of 2000. And then there was Sudha waiting there, and we left together and came to Tiruvannamalai, and we are still here 20 years later.
Wow. What brought you out of the cave then finally? What was it
It felt its time. It was not something particular. I mean, everything contributed. The fact that Suda was waiting there and that we want to start a life together was also an aspect, but it was not only that. It was just somehow it felt now it's time to do something else. It felt rounded up, and it was clear it was not good to stay in the ashram together because it was upsetting quite many people that the ascetic, the one who is really doing the thing, comes now out and is in a relationship.
People can't handle that story, right? They can't handle the story of the guy sitting in the cave and then he has a relationship with somebody because you're not supposed to, right? You're not supposed to have that kind of life.
That has been difficult for many people to accept. So it was better that we go out of the picture. Now, as we are still together 20 years later, they start to accept, okay, it seems to be okay. But at that time, for the second time, I was upsetting many people in the ashram.
Man, that's an amazing story. Wow.
There we are, still here in Tiruvannamalai. Then previous I kept people away from me, and then I didn't do that. First we were living out in the country for 3 months, but then after that we went at the, well, it is quite a city there already. So we went to the city in a guest house. And other people used to come, friends used to come and also live there. Then we used to meet in the afternoon, have tea together. And then they were bringing other people. And then more people came, and then there were no more teacups, not enough teacups, so we dropped the tea and people would start to talk about Werner Satsang. So then we started to do it regularly, and since then somehow the Satsang emerged.
I love that slow transition to the satsang.
I never decided I want to be a satsang teacher, but I stopped pushing people away, keeping people away, and then people came, and that was fine. Still, I'm keeping my boundaries that I can do my own life, but I'm open to talk to people at times. And somehow it continues, and now it continues. I remember it's not so long ago, one woman talked about Facebook, and I said, no, I'm not on Facebook. And she said, no, you shouldn't be. And now I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook and have my own YouTube channel and do online satsangs. Actually, I didn't plan this either. We did the last satsang here now over the years. First I did 3 and then I reduced to 2. I felt that feels right for me that I'm doing 2 times in the winter season, 2 times a week. I'm doing satsangs. And people come, we sit together, meditate a bit, and then everybody goes their own way again. And the last satsang we did here on the roof, at 5 o'clock we stopped, and at 6 o'clock the lockdown was there. So people had to hurry home because of the lockdown. And somebody mentioned, but there is Zoom, you could do satsang on Zoom. I never had even heard the word of it. And then, well, others made contact and said, explained what the whole thing is, and said, where you could, and then I tried with a tablet. It was technically a lot of stuff was not quite right, but then it seemed people liked it, and so I started to do it once a week. Corinne helped me to set it up.
Nice.
Now I have a computer, first computer in my life at all. So I'm getting digital now.
But I just love how organic and natural it's been. And that's one of the things I've tried to sort of shed things over the last 10 years so that my life can become more like how it is when I'm in India. When I'm in India, everything just flows, it goes, and then coming back here and just, trying is the wrong word, because if you try, it's not it, but just allowing everything to be, organic like that. Like I love, so thank you so much for sharing your story from the beginning, from that very beginning of when you were young to all the way up till you are now. Because I think people come to your satsangs and they hear bits and pieces of it, unless they sit for many years like I have, and we know the whole story, piecing it all together. But it's always such a gift to be able to hear your story, even though there's many other aspects still. And of course, there's all the wisdom that he imparts to everybody when they ask the questions. But to hear your story from start till now is just it's a gift. So thank you for sharing that.
It's been my pleasure.
So next time you come back, we'll have, Sean will have to ask you his deep spiritual questions, which I know he has many.
Yeah,
or
yeah.
you could always wake up at 4 a.m. and attend the India satsang.
Yeah, that was the best I could do to not ask questions and interrupt you the whole time, because I mean the whole thing was Corinne said it, but I was thinking that that was a gift for you to share that with us. What I really enjoyed, I think the most is, what we're doing, the podcast is Turning Points, and it sounds like your biggest turning points were when it just felt like the right thing to do. It was just maybe not even the right thing, but it was just the thing to do to go into the cave and meditate. And then it was just the thing to do to come out of that. And that was your mechanism. It seemed like in your story was, it was just the thing to do at this time and space.
I mean, if you want to see a turning point in my life, when I grew up and come to India and all that, it was not really one point, really
Right.
One strong point. It kept on turning all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, the one turning point, and it was not one point, but a period of a few months, was after I went through a period of real craziness and then emerged from that. And from there, that was really a totally different experience. I can say I was living before for 35 years in one world, and since then now I have been living for 30 years in another world. And
Yes.
a world where there is basically peace, not that struggle to get somewhere.
Yes.
A world where there is no more suffering, because that doesn't mean everything is pleasant. The world is still a moment pleasant, a moment unpleasant, a moment it's nice, a moment it's not nice. But the mind is not more creating suffering out of it. I used to wrench myself with all kinds of things, and then at the end, really crazy. I want enlightenment, and all that painful hurting myself unnecessarily, that is gone for good. And I'm not intending to ever start it again.
Man, wow, powerful, man. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Werner. So good to see you.